Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be covering some of the initial steps that I took for this plane. So this is a bf-109, a German World War II fighter. It's still a work in progress, as you can probably tell by the fact that a lot of the details aren't implemented yet, but I'm going to cover sort of how I did the base shape of it in this video since I had some requests for that, and I think it is an interesting topic. So I'm going to do this video by going through the feature tree, since a lot of this, if I was doing live, would take a long time of just tuning parameters, which isn't really necessary. So this is what the plane's looking like so far. If I go to perspective, it looks pretty good. I'm just doing the rivets on the tail section right now, which is, as you can imagine, taking a minute, but it's not too bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and jump my, let's see if I can, if there's a button to do that right here. So I'm going to go all the way to the beginning. It'll take a second for it to load back. So I'm going to pause the video for a minute. Okay, so now there's nothing here, but I can show kind of the initial steps. So first off, and I have a written tutorial on how to do this, but I set up my schematics, so I have these guide curves to kind of orient everything and line up the plane in the environment using schematics that I want to kind of trace to replicate the aircraft. So the first step is just sort of lining up these sketches and images. And my previous video has it's a written tutorial, and it's just kind of an announcement of that written tutorial, but it explains how to do this step pretty in depth, I think. So the first thing I do in terms of features is I have this sketch which just creates a center line along the front view of the aircraft, so that in the next step I can create this plane. And what this plane, oh, whoops, I didn't want to sketch on it. What this plane does, not to be confused with airplane, is it's just the center plane that I'm going to build the aircraft over. So I can do half the aircraft and then mirror it to the other side. So the first steps I take in this case are I just draw out a kind of outline of what the aircraft looks like. So I'm starting with the tail section. So I just kind of trace it out with some discretization at each of these kind of seams. And I'm just using this midplane, and I'm tracing the right-hand view to kind of get some guide curves. And then I add two more planes. So one plane is going to be at the front. Again, I don't want to sketch on it. I want to show it. So that's going to be at the front here. And the second plane is at the back, like so. So these kind of are two constraining planes. And then what I can do is I can sketch this line. Is just kind of a reference line. So I'm going to skip that, but what I can do, this is going to jump a step, but I create a sketch on the front here, or on the back here, that has like kind of the contour that I want the back of the aircraft to have. Then I have the front contour, and I use this line and a tangency constraint on a spline here to have it come perpendicular, like come to a right angle at the top here, so when I mirror it, it will smoothly transition. And then the other component, there's two more sketches here. So there's the top kind of guide curve and the bottom guide curve. And what that looks like within the boundary sweep, or I guess it's a boundary bus base. If I open that and edit the feature, you can see that I have my two sketches here. And then I have the guide curves down here. And what that lets me do is it will kind of map between these two front and back faces, and then it will ensure that it goes along these guide curves. So it creates some pretty nice geometry for what I'm doing, like so. And then I take the step of just mirroring this geometry, and in this mirror, I am merging it so they become one part. So now this is like kind of the tail section. It's just one piece, and I think it looks pretty good for what it's supposed to be. Next step is I'm going to create a plane on the back, which is kind of redundant because it's the same as this plane here. Or is it? No, it's actually up here. So that was a mistake. But this plane is similar, but it's for the front of the aircraft. So now I'm going to do this kind of section of the aircraft. And again, I use the boundary function between these 2 points. Here it has this kind of weird shape just because I'm going to cut that out anyway, so I didn't bother make it really refined. So it's the same process between these two using the a converted sketch of the cross section from this back section, and then just propagating it forward and then creating a guide curve that lined up with the schematic to get this shape. And then I cut out the room for the cockpit, so that kind of weird kind of neck is no longer visible, and you can see that this just lines up with the cockpit there. The next step I took is just kind of blocking out the cockpit. So this looks kind of goofy, and what I'm doing is I'm going to do a common filter, like a Boolean operation with this and the front view, in order to get the section of the cockpit that I want. So you can see I have these two intersecting, and then I'm going to use a combine feature, which in this case I'm going to take the common between the two. So it just creates this little section, which is going to be kind of the center portion, so this portion of the cockpit. And then I just mirror that like I did earlier, so it just is on the other side now for symmetry. And then I did another boundary, this time without a guide curve. But I took this, I drew a sketch on the back here, which you can see, and then I bounded that into the just the face that was defined here. And something important I did here is, in order to make it normal, you can set these constraints. So if you have none, it looks like that, where it just kind of goes between the two and it doesn't quite look right. But you can set up a normal direction. So if I do normal to profile, it will have some component that's coming straight out of this face, which makes it look way more organic, like this, rather than having like some non-smooth, like it wouldn't. What this does is it enforces that this and this have the same like curvature, essentially, or same slope at the interface, so it's a smooth transition rather than being an abrupt transition. Next part is a little annoying, but what I'm going to do is draw another plane, which is at the front of where the cockpit goes. So you can see this plane here is at the very front of the cockpit. And then I'm going to do another boundary to get kind of the nose section of the plane. So this is, again, the same process I've been using, where it's constrained by the front and back here. No guide curve in this case, because it's pretty organic. But what I did do is this, again, has that normal constraint. Or I guess it does have guide curves. I used the sides here as guide curves. That way it would actually line up. What I meant by no guide curve is there's none on the top. Yeah, so just ran through these, and the guide curves extended it to the back to these points. So these are the two sketches that I used, and then I just extruded or did the boundary between them. Very convenient. It's I find that tool incredibly helpful. The boundary bus base right up here. It's like a loft with more power, essentially. Then just cutting out that little kind of angle right here, and this plane here, I think, yeah. So here you can see that the cockpit has this kind of brace here, which is also this piece here from a different angle. So I was creating a plane that matched that. So in the next step, I could project. So this is project curve. I could project a line, and it looks like I projected it onto this piece here, so that it lines up with this angle. So let me show that. So I'm going to show that, and you can see that this line lines up with this slope right here to get the correct shape, or the correct kind of constraint on this part of the cockpit. So this is the projected curve onto the surface. Next, I have a kind of sketch that's just used to map out the kind of front curvature. So it's on this plane, and it has a condition where it is piercing this guide sketch. So what this guide sketch does is it lets me basically draw this so that it's on this plane, but it intersects with the correct point on this surface. So that's kind of drawing an initial constraint for the shape of the cockpit. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a plane that's on this sketch and just kind of defines that first section. Then I'm going to extrude that back to kind of get this that frontal kind of slope of the cockpit. And you can see it's still nowhere near done, but that's kind of that step. And then I use this plane, which I'm going to, because it has to line up with this edge and it has to meet this cockpit, like this front part. So what I do is I have a two conditions. I have this edge, so that lines up nicely there, and then I have this point where it meets, and you can see there's a little section. It comes in a little diagonally, but that's kind of what it's supposed to do anyways. So that's nice. So I have this sketch, and then what I can do is I draw on that sketch, or on that plane, sorry, and I extrude backwards from this through to the this edge along this direction. So what that looks like is I've got my plane, I've got the sketch on the plane, and I'm extruding. This is the direction that it's extruding, so it's extruding in this direction. So not normal to the sketch or the plane or the sketch or whatever, but along that direction, and it goes until it hits this face. And I made it so it didn't merge. That way I could duplicate it with a mirror and do a body mirror to get it to the other side. And then I just combine them to make them one piece. And then you can see that there's this weird protrusion here that is really not supposed to be there. So what I do is I take another sketch, in this case just a little triangle that's on this plane, so you can see that it kind of bisects that extra region, and then by extruding it backwards I'm cutting that extra region off and making it so these meet up like three edges on one point, instead of having what I've got here where you've got the three edges but you've got another three edges here. And then just mirror that effect, which is pretty straightforward. Gets it on both sides, and then I just did the kind of roof here. So this is just lining up this piece right here, since it's not supposed to have a kind of lip. So that lip I'm just correcting with that extrude. And then the next extrude is, I believe, yeah, this one. So this is on the side or on the midplane, and I extruded it equally in both directions, just to get out to the edge of the cockpit, and then I do a fillet with the same, whoops, I jumped ahead a little too much. I do a fillet with the same radius as this curve here, and it closes that off really nicely and gets the contours of the cockpit looking good. It'll look better once the braces and like supports are all mounted, but that's something I need to get to still. Let's see, this plane is up here, so now I'm doing the nose section of the aircraft. So again, a boundary boss extrude, and now I've got this kind of more circular approaching region. I've got this back region, and then again, what I'm doing is I've got this top or bottom, I suppose, here, and top contours that are the guide curves that are just tracing this schematic, the right-hand side schematic or the side view schematic. Then I go down here. This sketch is just constraining like the front, so that I can set a plane that exists so that it's at the tip right before the propeller starts. And then yet another boundary. This time the cross section is a circle, and there's no guide curve in this case. It just goes straight down. And there you can see it's a pretty abrupt curve, so I don't have a normal constraint, but what I do have is a fillet to close it off and make it have that more rounded edge. So that's how that goes. You can see I use a lot of extra planes to keep track of like all the different angles that I'm using. So I'll hide a bunch of those because they're kind of cluttering. What I won't hide is the symmetry plane. So there's that, and this also doesn't need to be visible anymore. This plane doesn't need to be visible either. The next step is just making the nose cone. So it's just a simple revolve extrude, or revolve around like the cross section that matches with the schematic. So that's pretty straightforward. And I believe I start doing the tail. So again, boundary. So I've gone over this process several times, but it's the same thing. Going towards the back where I have the sketch and then the guide curves that are mapping the tail. Now one thing I did do is here you can see it has this contour going down. I'm not doing that yet for the tail. I just did a straight shot. But what I do next is I map that contour, or create that contour by subtracting it out from here. So that's where I get that shape. And then you can see this actually starts making a really nice airfoil, which is good because that's what it's supposed to be, like that kind of shape. So that means that the geometry is not too far off because it starts getting that correct behavior. I create a plane here which constrains the top of the tail fin, or the yaw control fin. Or I guess rudder is what they call it, huh? And then this step is just creating a surface out of, so I took the body and then I created a surface. So if I subtract or hide that, you can see there's now this surface here, which is going to be used in a boundary surface. And the reason I have to do that is because they're going to be different bodies, and it doesn't like extruding between different bodies, essentially. And then I'm going to create this top constraint, which has the kind of airfoil design again. And then I create a composite curve. So this composite curve is just the perimeter of this surface. And then when I do a boundary surface, which a boundary surface is different than the boundary boss base because it's got no volume, essentially. Like you can see that it's just a surface. And then I'm going to mirror that to get to the other side of the tail fin. And finally, I'm going to do here I'm going to hide the schematics because they're, at least, which view is it? This view, because it's kind of in the way. But you can see it's open on this side, so I can't close it yet. But what I do is I do another boundary surface that just closes this tail section in a way that preserves like all the constraints. And you can see it's got some weird like bumpiness that's not on the actual plane. That will get fixed. So next I do a surface knit, where you select all the surfaces, and if they form a closed body, you can merge them and create a solid out of them. So once I do that, you can see it went from being a, like previously it was just the faces, and now it's got volume in it. It's solid, which means that I can go ahead and combine it with the rest of the plane, like so. So that gives me the rudder. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that extra section off the tail just to make it flat, as it should be. And then this boundary here, what I believe does is the cap, so the top little piece here, and I do half of it for symmetry's sake. So I draw a sketch that's the half of the airfoil up here, and then I do another sketch that traces this view, and then I do a boundary, and this boundary is normal on both conditions. So it's normal here, so it slopes up like consistently, and then it's also normal up here so that it comes together and it's smooth at the top. And then I just mirror that, combine it, and there's that portion of the tail. So that's how that goes. Then this next section I believe is doing the rear part of the tail. So it's pretty straightforward. I take the half of the view, so like this kind of rear section, and then I have the inner plane thing, and I just do the boundary between the two, and there shouldn't be any guide curves on this one. And it's normal to profile on both, so for the reasons I've mentioned previously. So that's kind of the tail there, and you can see there's still some geometry there that's missing. So once I mirror this and combine it, then I just go ahead and subtract out that little detail just to get the shape looking right. And then the next step is this plane, which is going to go to the end of the kind of, I guess, pitch control fins, like so. And then I do another boundary. So what I do is I'm doing this as a separate piece now. So I draw the kind of contour of the wing or of the fin at this point. So I have that airfoil, and I have the same in the center of the model. That way I can do the boundary between the two. Here it's basically a loft at this point because I'm not using any of the normal features, but it sets up that kind of shape while preserving the airfoil kind of design. And then I subtract because there's just some details like here it comes together, it kind of closes off, that way the yaw control actually has yaw control and it doesn't interfere with the pitch control. And then I have this plane, which its purpose is, it's a little hard to see, but it should be constrained by these 2 points, right? And be perpendicular to the surface so that I can do the same exact thing I did at the top of the tail with the boundary. But here, instead of mirroring it, because the airfoil isn't symmetric, I have two boundaries that come together, and then I mirror the entire fin over to the other side to get the tail. And then I can combine those two pieces with the overall structure to turn it into, again, one solid body. And once I do that, now it goes to the wings. So I just kind of create this flat portion. The wings are basically the same process, so I'm going to go very quickly over them because this video is already getting quite long. So again, I set the plane that's kind of the end of the wing, draw the airfoils, and extrude the wing. This time, the wing does have that kind of upward camber. That's not the right word, upward slope. So I have that captured. And then I do the same thing I did earlier with the plane at the tip to round off the tips of the wing. So I'll hide that again, and that's just these steps. Looks a little odd there. I think I might have fixed that, or maybe not. I might fix that later, because that doesn't look very good. I'll redo that if it's still like this when I finish the video. But like that is kind of how I do that, and then I just combine the wings with the body, and then I do these fillets to get the contours to line up with the main fuselage. And then for the propeller, what I do, because that's the next step, and that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to finish the propeller, and then I'm going to end this video, and I'll probably add a timeline or something. So this axis is kind of the symmetry axis of the propeller. I create a plane which is on that symmetry axis and perpendicular to the right plane. And then I just extrude a portion of the propeller blade, so it's got that kind of airfoil design again. It goes from the center down through the nose, and then I do another plane to kind of set up another part of the constraint. So this piece, if I open up the front view again, you can see that the propeller kind of gets wider and then narrower again. So this new plane that I just created is at the point where it's widest. And then I do a boundary, and that boundary is has some twist to it now, and that twist is just by having this second sketch twisted, and it creates that twist from the initial part to the lower part where it also gets wider. And I do some mapping to in my sketch I did some stuff to line it up with the schematic there and have the right kind of width. Then I add another plane, which is at the very bottom of the propeller. Right here, it's not like positioned quite right, but it's positioned right. It's just like it should be under here, but it still works. And then I do another of the same boundary to get down to that point. And this one has that normal constraint at the top interface, as you can see. So it's got it's smooth. And then I have finally another plane here, which is the same kind of thing. It's just doing what I've done before with the bottom to create that smooth kind of rounded end. And then I just pattern the propeller 3 times for the 3 blades, combine them with the body, and then that should be the extent of this, because now these curves are how I started setting up the rivets. So long video, but that's the entire feature tree up to this point. So up to the point that I posted on my story, or not my story, that's other social media, up to the point I posted in the community section. So hopefully this gave some insight. I know I went a little bit fast, so if there are any specific questions or any requests for going over a particular tool more in depth, I'd be happy to oblige that. So yeah, thanks for watching.